The perpetrator, Anton, walked to the outside of the shed during late afternoon/early night. He grabbed the axe and hammer that was in the shed. He then made his way to the front porch and snuck in through the unlocked door. There are footprints of Anton's on the porch. He then snuck in and used the hammer to bash Mr. Smith with. There was Mr. Smith's blood on the hammer. The autopsy shows there was no struggle, so Mr. Smith's was hit unexpectedly. He was dead on impact and fell from the chair. He then attacked Miss Smith. He used the hammer on Miss Smith too, but she attacked and tried to defend herself. She ended up hitting him. There was blood on the hammer that belonged to Miss Smith and Anton. Anton tipped over a chandelier on the way. On the way to the money chest where he was robbing Mr. Smith, he left hair, fingerprints, and blood drops. He did end up stealing most of the money. He then headed out the way through the front door. His footprints were on the front porch as if he were leaving that way, but that's when he ran into Mr. Smith's dog. He immediately ran back through the house, trying to escape the dog. He busted open the window, cut himself, bled some more, left hair, a fingerprint, and a footprint as he jumped through, dropped the axe, and ran far away to get away from the dog. The dog ended up staying by the house, but Anton made it free because the dog could not jump through the window. Therefore, it had to go through the front door, and by the time it made it through the front door, Anton was already gone. He escaped with the money after killing the Smiths. This is the interview with Henry Bauer. What is your relation to the Smiths?
I worked as a farmhand.
How long have you worked for them?
About 2 years.
Why would someone want to murder the Smiths, in your opinion?
They were rich.
Where do you sleep?
Little cottage on the farm.
How would you describe your relationship with the Smiths?
I liked them. We'd have tea together.
What color hair do you have, in
Brown.
your opinion? Okay.
Brownish.
Were you close with Anton?
Yes, we definitely worked together.
Where were you on the night of the murders?
My cottage, after we had tea.
How often did you have tea with the Smiths?
It was a usual event every Sunday.
Would you consider the Smiths to be wealthy, in your opinion?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Why did you have cuts on your hands when the police interrogated you?
Well, I got them working.
Okay. This is the interrogation of Mary Ann Abbott. Where were you on Sunday night?
Well, I was at my mother's house.
Can anyone other than your mom testify that you were staying at her house?
No, I only saw my mama.
Why did you decide to stay home at your mother's house?
Just to visit her.
When did you get back from your mom's? Sunday night or Monday morning?
Monday morning.
Okay. Did you see anyone when you got back to the Smiths?
No.
Did you happen to be romantically involved with anyone?
Why, me? No.
Why was your hair on the front, why was a hair strand left on the front room floor?
Well, it probably fell out while I was working. I walked through that room a lot, and I have a lot of hair.
Why was your fingerprint on a teacup?
Well, I clean and cook for my job.
How would you describe your relationship with the Smiths?
It's good. I love my aunt.
Do you know if any of the farmhands dislike the Smiths?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Miss Abbott, for your time. I am Grace Hinkley. I graduated from UCLA with a master's degree in criminology 7 years ago. Since then, I've been working for the LAPD. I currently spend my time as part of the forensics team. Over the past 3 years, I have taken a plethora of different classes in different forensic specialties, including hair, fingerprints, blood, DNA, and shoe impressions. I'm qualified to consider myself as an expert in each of those forensic pieces of evidence. Let's take a look at the evidence that makes Anton the murderer. This is fingerprint number 2 found on the hammer. As you can see, there's a gap in the ridges on both of these prints. There's also a fascinating 2 bifurcations that end in ridge endings that face each other, which is very unique. And there's also a ridge ending that's very prominent on the top of it, which also makes these prints very similar. They are also both loops, which makes them a easy giveaway that they are comparable. The print found on the East Room window is comparable to Anton's left thumb. We first know this because of the unique core structure. See how there is a ridge ending going straight into the core, which is also on the print found at the scene. There is also a ridge, an island found to the right of both of the prints that also might just be a full ridge that was cut off, but they both are similar. This blood puddle found at the scene belongs to Alexander Smith. This proves that he was hit by a blunt force object to the back of the head, and he was not expecting it, so the intruder snuck in. This blood pool belongs to Rebecca Smith, and it's not right under her head, which proves there was a struggle between her and the perpetrator before she died. So she was not caught by surprise. In my opinion, I think she saw Mr. Smith get attacked and killed, and so she tried to fight back. This blood spatter found on the wall behind Alexander Smith's body proves that he was hit by a blunt force object, which I think is the hammer. This blood drop belongs to Anton, and this confirms my theory is correct, that either Anton was hit by Miss Smith, which caused him to bleed, or when he busted open the window, he cut his hand or some part of his body and started to bleed as he jumped out of the window. The blood drop of the East Room window is comparable to Henry Bauer or Anton. Both samples had a reaction to anti-A and anti-RH. They did not have a reaction with anti-B. The blood drop on the East Room floor is comparable to Henry Bauer or Anton. Both samples had a reaction to anti-H and anti-RH. They did not have a reaction with anti-B, which makes them similar. The blood droplets on the axe are comparable to Henry Bauer or Anton. Again, like the previous two blood drops, they had a reaction to anti-A and anti-RH, but they did not have a reaction to anti-B. Again, the blood drops on the front porch are comparable to Henry or Anton. They have the same reactions as the past three. There is only one hair strand at the scene that matches Anton's, and it was the hair found on the East Room window. The hair found on the East Room window is almost identical to Anton's. They are both straight, both blonde. Both their medulla patterns are continuous. Both their medulla structures are amorphous. They both have the same scale pattern, which is imbricate. The only other hair that looks remotely similar is Anton's. This footprint is comparable to Anton's shoe. This is the footprint near the workshop. I know this because the size is similar. I can also tell the shape of the prints are pretty much identical. The one thing that makes this print different from Henry's, which is also a very similar shoe print, is that this print has circles on the inside of the toe, which Henry's does not, but Anton's matching print does. Therefore, we know it's Anton's. This footprint near the east window is comparable to Anton's print. It is the same size and shape. It also has the circles on the inside, which I said earlier make it a defining factor. No other suspects' footprints have that. This footprint is also identical to the print near the workshop. The DNA left on the East Room window is comparable to Anton's and only his. These strands are the exact same sequence. You can tell because they are the same sequence is so packed and detailed, especially the two exact same lines right under the first bar. Alexander Smith was found lying on his back dead. His body was chiefly consumed up to his third or fourth rib by the fire. There were 3 wounds on the left side of his head. Immediately over the lower portion of the cartilage of the left ear, making 3 separate holes within the cartilage. The skull was fractured on the top of his head. The wound must have occasioned his death, as Dr. Ray, his medical examiner, explained. And he also thinks there was no appearance of struggling, which means he was caught by surprise and hit with a blunt force trauma, which caused him to die. As you can see, Miss Smith was found on her stomach with her head towards the fire, which is the opposite of Mr. Smith. She has 2 wounds upon her forehead, one that produced a skull fracture, and another that produced a depression also within her skull. There are 4 wounds upon the upper and posterior part of her head, and one of those was one that created the depression. In the autopsy report, Dr. Ray shares his opinion, and he thinks that Mrs. Smith was hit with the same object that Mr. Smith was hit, which in my opinion is the hammer. He also suggests that her wounds are consistent with someone who would have fought back, so she must have heard Mr. Smith being hit first, then she tried to stand up and defend herself.